American newspapers, embattled as you just heard, embattled as they are, embattled to the point where many good journalists are looking for second careers or are already into them because their papers or whatever have downsized. Despite this, many American newspapers still do that indispensable, blessed task of assigning reporters, photographers, editors to long involved, complicated investigative projects. And none of the submissions in newspaper journalism affirm this more than the really brilliant series that we are awarding this year's Hillman Newspaper Prize to. The Justice and the Balance series that were authored by Brad Heath and Kevin McCoy, which ran in USA Today. Brad Heath told me that they spent 6 months researching these series of stories before any of them saw light of day. What they were looking at was 200, what they were looking for, they found 201 cases in which federal prosecutors were found to have done things that were utterly improper in their cases. In some cases, this resulted in wrongful imprisonments, wrongful convictions, convictions that should never have been handed down. And then they looked at, well, what happened then? What happened to the people who went to jail unjustly? What happened to these prosecutors? Were there any consequences? They found the cases, they found the transcripts, they went through tens of thousands of pages of court cases. What they did not really find were cases in which prosecutors paid any significant price or suffered any penalties for wrongfully convicting people, for withholding evidence they should have clearly presented, for, if not exactly suborning perjury, at least rewarding witnesses to tell stories which were not, strictly speaking, true. They documented how rare it is for these prosecutors to have suffered any consequences and told story after story after story of people who went to jail. Later, judges found out the real story, they released them, and the prosecutors expressed indifference and no consequences to follow. On January 10th of this year, responding to this series, which had finished running in December, Attorney General Eric Holder created a new unit at the Department of Justice to discipline prosecutors found to have committed this kind of misconduct. Upon hearing of this, one of the legal scholars that Brad and Kevin relied upon to help them navigate the complexities of this story, one of those legal scholars who you may remember from TV since OJ, Laurie Levinson, got a hold of them and said, "Looks like you got their attention." The series also got our attention, and it got our admiration. And for that reason, the 2011 Hillman Prize for newspaper journalism goes to Brad Heath and Kevin McCoy of USA Today.
This project started with what to me seemed like a fairly simple question after the case against Senator Ted Stevens collapsed. And it got us wondering if that can happen in a trial against a sitting U.S. senator in the nation's capital where the world is watching. What happens the rest of the time in the run-of-the-mill cases when nobody's paying attention? These aren't violations we're talking about that are some technical legal rules or that are some minutia. These are constitutional guarantees, and they're the bedrock of a fair trial. And what we found were cases where prosecutors had broken the rules in ways that set guilty people free and put innocent people in jail. But nothing we saw struck me, I think, more than going to Orlando a couple times last year and meeting a gentleman named Nino Lyons. Nino spent 3 years in a jail north of Orlando because a federal prosecutor hid evidence that could have proved him innocent in a drug trafficking case. And that was 3 years when Nino couldn't touch his kids and had to speak to them through a telephone in the county jail. And his story really illustrated to me the impact that these kind of violations can have, and also the government's occasional willingness to turn a blind eye to what happens. And the reason I think that is because the prosecutor in that case, what happened to him, we found out he was ordered to attend a one-day ethics workshop. So thank you very much. And Kevin?
As Brad said, I'd like to thank the editors of USA Today for the commitment and the support that they gave us with this project. It was a really tremendous amount of time that it took, and it was really important that they gave us that kind of time and commitment. I just want to say something that's a little bit cosmic about newspapers and this kind of reporting, and I'll read you something very quick by someone who's not here tonight, but is an inspiration in spirit. Something he wrote a long time ago. The only final importance of newspapers may very well be that people leave them on subways, and on the lonely, morose grumble of the Rockaway line, some Richard Wright, some James T. Farrell, some Hart Crane, some Norman Mailer, some Grace Paley, in the guise of an adolescent with his time to come, may pick you up, and by heaven, you have a duty to be ready for cross-examination. That was written by Murray Kempton. Who was the first daily journalism recipient of this award. And we're really honored and humbled to be in the same category of him. And USA Today and other newspapers don't get left on subways as much anymore. No newspaper does. But in the corners of cyberspace, I think, hope that the work that we did will linger on, and some other journalist will come across it and pick up the challenge and try to do more with this subject. And thank you very much.